There's a couple of things I want you to learn about your camera. One is the focal length, and that is over here. The focal length, for example, is how wide a view do you want to have, or does your camera allow you to have in your picture. For example, most cameras sometimes go from like a 22 millimeter all the way up to maybe a 50 millimeter. Now you see how that works? So in other words, this is known as our field of view. How much comes into the picture? This is what's known as a wide angle lens. This would be 18 millimeter, and what you want to be careful of is how much this might stretch or distort on the edges here. Notice this is an extreme zoom, 55 millimeter. So in other words, what you're trying to do is you're zooming in. So you would physically have to move closer to this young lady. Now, I want you to notice the second thing. We're going to put this about, let's say 35 millimeter. There we go. And now I want you to see the distance. Notice how much is in focus around the girl here. And we are 10 feet away. Let's go 5 feet away or 8 feet away. We're starting to get this shallow depth of field, and we're starting to blur. 7 feet away, more blur. 5 feet away, more. You see how that's working? When we get down to just a foot and a half or a couple of feet away, notice how little is in focus in the background. That's why when you get close to your subjects, you get a shallower depth of field. There's about 4 feet away, and that is within most people's comfort zone. And that's what makes that work. So in other words, you get a very soft focus in the background. We can concentrate on the subject's facial features and whatever they're doing with that. For example, click, and we have a picture of this young lady holding a pinwheel, and notice how everything behind her is slightly blurred. That's the difference when you use your distance here. Physically moving closer literally shallows that depth of field and takes things behind her out of focus, and then using your focal length. Notice I'm going to go with 18 millimeters here and move even a foot away, and look what I get within that picture. But here's what most people have, say a 22 millimeter lens, and that's what I would get on there. So if I want to make sure that I get that pinwheel, click, and there she is, pinwheel stopped, and very shallow depth of field there. Not a lot back there. So you'd want to zoom in a little bit. You would want to be about 4 feet away. Notice how I get the same. See this? By zooming in, watch this pinwheel. I'm 4 feet away. I'm using a little bit of a zoom, and I get exactly the same shot, but I'm a little further away. If I zoom in a little bit more and use a little wider angle, I still get the same shot. So in other words, if I don't want to intrude on my subjects and I want to zoom in, notice my background, notice what I want to have in focus, and notice my aperture and shutter speeds here so I can get that pinwheel sharp. Okay? So that's the relationship between distance and your zoom ratio or your focal length.